What would you do if someone told you that they saw a ghost? Probably laugh at them, change the subject, and hope they'd stop being so silly. But what if the ghost wasn't a figment of their imagination? What if it was real? Well, that might sound like a plot from a cheesy horror movie, but it's actually this strange story behind the dancing plague of 1518, an event that happened in medieval France when dozens of people started dancing uncontrollably in the streets, and some literally danced themselves to death. So how did this happen, and what was behind it? Was it mass hysteria, a curse, or even Satan himself? Let's find out. It's me, and you're watching this channel. Join me today as we look into the strange case of the dancing plague of 1518. July 1518. Strasbourg, France. It's the height of summer and temperatures are soaring. Life is good for the 25,000 or so residents of the town. They have food, shelter, and are generally happy. At least they were, until one day when everything changed. For reasons apparently known only to her, a woman named Frau Trafia began to dance in the street. She danced all day and all night and didn't stop. Boom. Her frenzied dancing attracted attention, causing more and more people to join in. Soon, dozens of townspeople were dancing alongside her. At first, this may have seemed like a fun event, but it soon became apparent that there was something strange going on. The dancers weren't dancing in any kind of organized fashion. In fact, they weren't even dancing at all. Their feet moved erratically, and they jumped, skipped and twirled around the streets in no discernible pattern. But perhaps even stranger than that was the fact that they wouldn't stop. No matter what anyone said or did, the dancers just kept going. Even when they collapsed from exhaustion, they continued to dance. Some bit their tongues or fainted, yet still they danced. They danced until their clothes were torn and their skin was raw. They danced until they died, and there were many deaths. In fact, it's estimated that as many as 15 people died as a result of dancing. The epidemic began to spread outwards from Strasbourg. It traveled to nearby towns and villages, infecting more and more people. Eventually, it reached such a fever pitch that officials had to get involved. They issued edicts, trying to end the dancing, but these proved useless. The outbreak lasted for months, with the last cases ending in September of 1518. So why did this happen? To answer the question, let's take a closer look at the various theories that historians have put forward. The most common theory is that the dancing plague was caused by ergot poisoning. Ergot is a fungus that grows on rye and other grains. It can cause a variety of symptoms, including convulsions, hallucinations, and uncontrollable movements. In other words, it's the perfect explanation for the dancing plague. And indeed, it has been suggested that ergotism may have been responsible. Ergotism is relatively common. It occurs when people eat flour or grain that has been contaminated by the fungus. Bread. During the Middle Ages, bread was a staple of the diet, and it was made from rye flour. Thus, if the rye had been infected with ergots, it's easy to see how the fungus could have spread. There's evidence to support this theory. 2. In 1518, there were reports of rye crops in Germany being infected with oak bind, and these outbreaks typically affect grain in years when the weather is wet and cold, which was certainly the case in 1518. However, while ergotism does cause convulsions, it doesn't typically cause the kind of dancing seen during the dancing play. Also, not everyone who ate the contaminated bread developed these symptoms. This suggests that something else may have been at play. Another possible cause is psychological stress. It's been suggested that the dancing plague was a form of mass hysteria. Hysteria is a psychological condition that can cause a variety of physical and emotional symptoms, including dancing. In the Middle Ages, hysteria was often seen as a female disorder, and it was commonly treated with dancing and other forms of exercise. Indeed, there were even special dances that were designed to cure hysteria. It's possible that this contributed to the dancing plague, as people may have believed that dancing was a way to rid themselves of the disease. However, this theory doesn't really explain why the dancing plague happened in the first place. There was no widespread outbreak of hysteria in 1518. Nor was there any particular reason to think that dancing would help. A third and final theory is that the dancing plague was caused by something supernatural, such as a curse or possession by a demon. In the Middle Ages, people were very religious, and they believed that everything that happened had a divine cause. It was common for outbreaks of illness or strange behavior to be blamed on witchcraft or heresy. Indeed, during the dancing plague, some people were accused of being witches. They were tortured in an attempt to get them to confess. But this didn't end the plague. There is some evidence to support the supernatural theory. One of the victims, a man named Richard Mansman, had been excommunicated from the church for stealing communion wine. It's possible that this made him susceptible to demonic influence, and he may have been the source of the dancing plague. However, there is no way of knowing for sure. So what really caused the dancing plague of 1518? Unfortunately, we may never know for sure. All of the theories are plausible, but none are definitive. Perhaps the most likely cause is agate poisoning. After all, the fungus was widespread in 1518, and its symptoms are consistent with those of the dancing plague. However, we can't rule out the possibility that other factors were also involved. For example, it's been suggested that mass hysteria may have played a role, as well as psychological stress brought on by the harsh conditions of life in the Middle Ages. Ergotism and hysteria tend to affect women more than men, which may explain why the majority of victims were female. Finally, there is always the possibility that something supernatural was at work. After all, the Middle Ages were a time when people believed that curses and demonic possession were real, and there is no way of knowing for sure that they were wrong. In the end, the dancing plague of 1518 remains a mystery. All we know for sure is that a group of people in medieval France danced themselves to death. But why they did so is anyone's guess. Perhaps you have some insight into this strange event. If you do, please share your thoughts below. And before you go, make sure to like and subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.